Melanie, I really appreciate you making the time to chat with me about government transparency. I figure this will be just a televised extension of a conversation you and I unfortunately have had for too many years. So let's start here. Why is FOG concerned about the way the Bernalillo County Commission has decided to choose its next county manager?
You know, Jeff, one of the things that FOG is always concerned about is our mission. And our mission is to advocate, to educate, and to litigate on behalf of the public's right to know. And that extends to the public's right to know what their government is doing through its public meetings and through its public records.
Gotcha. So let's dig a little bit deeper. I have read this phrase, and of course, you and I are very familiar with it. But for viewers who don't understand, one of your concerns with this process is that there may have been what's called a rolling quorum. Melanie, what is a rolling quorum and why did the legislature make it illegal?
Rolling quorum is defined as a quorum of a public body that meets outside of the actual boardroom. Maybe they have a telephone tree, maybe they meet in a different format. But if, for example, 3 members of a 5-member board discuss their business in telephone calls, where one person will call and get buy-in, and then they call a second, and then they call a third, that's called a rolling quorum because they've literally made all the decisions, they've made all of the discussion private, and the public has not been allowed to be a part of that discussion.
And is it that sort of public interest that had the legislature crafting language around rolling quorums into the Open Meetings Act? Is that sort of the heart of why that's something that these boards aren't allowed to do?
I think that's the whole basis of not only the Open Meetings Act, but the Open Records Act, the Inspection of Public Records, is that it is the public's right to know. The public pays for these services, they pay salaries, they pay for the operations. The public has a right to know what its government is doing. And to be open and accountable and transparent is the basic building block of democracy.
Gotcha. Before we get to FOG's complaint, I want to add just a little bit of context here. The Bernalillo County manager oversees an annual budget of nearly $350 million, one of the 30 largest county jails in the nation, and the only government-run, medically staffed drug detox facility in a place where there's enough dope on the street to stun a team of velociraptors. Why is it so important that the public be in the loop when this person is chosen?
Probably have to ask the other question, why don't you want the public in the loop when you're doing this kind of an appointment? We want to make sure that the person is qualified, that the person has the background, the understanding, and the knowledge to be able to do this job. But we also want to make sure that the hiring process is fair. We want to make sure that people who, maybe people of color, maybe different genders, etc., that everyone's given an equal footing and an equal opportunity to be considered for a job where they are qualified to complete and do well in.
Okay, I appreciate you adding that little bit of context. Let's talk about the complaint that FOG has filed with the state attorney general. What exactly are y'all alleging, and what evidence do you have to back up your claims so far?
We came into the office last Wednesday, and one of the services that FOG offers is a free hotline where people can call with concerns that they have about how their government is working, whether it is a meeting, whether it is records, whether there are other questions. We may not be able to address some of those issues, but we might be able to help them find what they're looking for. When we came in last Wednesday, the hotline started ringing off the hook. People were calling and alleging that there may have been some misconduct done by several members of the Bernalillo County Commission. We checked the sources that we had. We looked into what we think is a rolling quorum. We actually looked at some evidence from a news release that was distributed by members of the commission prior to the meeting last week. And at that point, we said, you know, we need to have the Attorney General weigh in and see if this is in fact a rolling quorum or if this is just people who are disgruntled making noise.
Gotcha. What else are you hoping to learn beyond what you've seen in published news accounts and other sources that you've got? And what have y'all done to learn more about how this process has worked?
Well, we actually asked for a series of emails. We filed a formal inspection of public records request for emails between a certain time frame, and we asked that the emails, if they contain certain keywords, that those emails be provided to us.
I will be very excited to see what comes back from your IPA request, Melanie. What does FOG hope for in terms of process and resolution from here?
Well, we hope that this is actually a process where the Attorney General looks at all of the evidence, not only the evidence that we may be able to find, but evidence that they can also find. We hope that people who may have information come forward and talk about it. And we hope that the Bernalillo County Commission, if they are found to have had a rolling quorum, will definitely take the Attorney General's determination and remedy the situation.
Let's talk a little bit about what I have always perceived as a bit of a flaw in the system or a ghost in the machine here, if you will. Let's just say hypothetically that the AG looks into this, determines that there was an illegal rolling quorum, and admonishes the Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners in a findings letter. Unfortunately, those are not binding. They don't force the Board of County Commissioners to do anything different. What would the next step be if you got a determination like that? What does FOG do next?
Well, the next step is always to look at all of the evidence and then, if need be, to file in court. That is the final step in the remedy process. And there is an allowance for that for the enforcement in the Open Meetings Act. Whether FOG would actually take action on that would have to be determined, but that is a final step that can be made.
Gotcha. In your experience and FOG's experience, have positive findings letters that arrive at the same determination that the organization has in the past, have those made good pieces of evidence if you decide that you'd like to file in court?
I honestly can't answer that because I don't know how many, I haven't gone back through all the records to see exactly how many lawsuits we have filed concerning open meetings. I do know just recently we had filed a complaint with the Attorney General concerning an action that was taken by the Eastern New Mexico Board of Regents. And we had asked that they look into what we felt was action that was taken in a closed meeting. The Attorney General launched an investigation, agreed with what we had thought had occurred, and sent a letter to the regents at Eastern New Mexico University telling them that the actions that they had taken were not legal as they were not done in public, and directing the Board of Regents to meet again and take up the items on a new agenda in a new meeting.
That's a fabulous result and a bit of good news for the show. We don't have enough of that. One thing I want to talk about is timelines, Melanie. In my experience, it usually takes about 6 months to complete one of these investigations. Although I will say that I think that clock has sped up a bit under Attorney General Torres. That could get a little bit sticky here. The current county manager is leaving at the end of June. Obviously, the board would like the new person in before then. So I just wonder, have you had any indication with the State Department of Justice, the Attorney General, about timelines here? Is this something that it seems like they might prioritize?
Haven't seen anything where there are not how quickly this will be resolved. We do know several years ago when Attorney General Balderas had a similar complaint about an issue in an open meeting with the University of New Mexico Regents. He reached out very quickly, did his investigation, and determined they had acted outside of the Open Meetings Act, and they were required to put the item on the agenda, discuss it in public, etc. We know on the issue with Eastern New Mexico, that meeting was held in January. We submitted that request soon after that meeting was held, and we heard about that request at the 1st of April. So there may be some reasoning for the Attorney General to move forward on it a little quicker. We don't know.
Okay. Let's hope for a speedy resolution on this one, particularly given the importance of the position as I laid out before. Melanie, I'd like to end with a little plug for the Open Meetings Act. It's twin transparency law, which you mentioned earlier, the Inspection of Public Records Act, tends to get all the headlines, the flowers, the litigation, all that kind of stuff. Why should people care just as much about the Open Meetings Act as we do the Inspection of Public Records Act?
Well, again, Jeff, these two pieces of legislation that were enacted by the legislature back in 1978, they're not new. They've been around for a while, and they're around because it makes a difference. If people can attend a public meeting and know what is on the agenda and know what is going to be discussed and can feel good about what their commission is doing, what their city council is doing, is what their school board is doing, it goes a long way to foster a trust in not only the process, but trust in democracy. It's important.
Melanie, thank you so much for the chat, and we'll be keeping our eyes on how all of this plays out going forward. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, and thank you for having FOG as a guest today.
Happy to do it.